Welcome to another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms, where we talk to leaders who have earned their stripes through their craft. And Renard, I'm excited about our guest today for one good reason. Do you want to guess what that is?
You tell me, I'm curious. What's the reason?
So, the reason is we actually had our guest's partner a few episodes ago, or I should say several episodes ago now. And I'm really excited because this is a power couple. And I am very excited to speak today to Monica Marquez. Monica, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Renard. Thanks, Amir. Appreciate you sharing your platform. I'm excited to talk about all things leadership, all things, black belts and boardrooms, and love your framework. Love the idea of like, how do you bring that discipline from, the martial arts into leadership? And I truly believe that many of our core values are kind of like imprinted on us from these childhood kind of like hobbies and disciplines that really make us who we are as adults. So love it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Well, I think there's a few things in common that we all share. A, we're all in Texas. So I'm super excited about that.
Yes. Yes.
And, coming back to Texas for you, I know has a whole lot of meaning, but we'll get into that in a few minutes here. But how? Let me start off with maybe as they say in the media business, right? A softball for you. Did you ever, growing up in Odessa, Texas, a small town, think that you'll be doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely not. I knew that I wasn't gonna stay in Odessa, Texas. I didn't know what that meant, like, going out there, partly because, growing up in a small West Texas town, right, and an Air Force family that before we settled in Midland, Odessa, we moved around a lot. And throughout my whole career, I realized that that actually laid the foundation for me that was really gave me this natural agility and this like ease with change because I kind of grew up around it and it became normalized for me. And so I always knew that I wasn't going to stay in Odessa, but I had no idea that I was going to end up moving to New York City, living there for the better part of 25 years, and then full circle coming back, to Dallas and splitting my time between the two places, but continuing to do what I love, right? And really the through line that I realized, has been throughout my whole career is that I've always focused on how do you help people maximize their potential um, wherever they are. Like, it's just this idea of what does it actually take to reinvent yourself when the rules change? And the rules now post AI feel like they're changing every 6 weeks. So it's like, I like exactly what you said. If I think back 25 plus years ago, did I think that I was going to end up here having a successful second business, being a serial entrepreneur after a 20-year career in corporate America? No, I never did think that, but I also knew that I'm this type of person that isn't afraid of change and isn't afraid to try something new and kind of pioneer and just say, okay, I'm going to give up my 20-year career that I've kind of built and give up the security of a paycheck and try to build something else. Because I always felt like, okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll go back or I'll reinvent myself in doing something else. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of reflecting of kind of full circle and what do I want to do with the next 50 years of my life?
Well, you certainly have a very inspiring career. I mean, I won't get into every single detail, but I mean, you are a person who has opened doors for many. I think that's one way to frame your career and the work you've done with others. Coming from a small town, I would imagine that the world looks so much bigger from you when you were younger, and then you're in this big New York City lifestyle, but now you're back here in Texas. So, if you can reflect, because I want to pick on what you just now said, which is it's hard to give up that paycheck. And I know in martial arts, for example, I'll pivot a little bit. Renard is more of a ground guy. Like if I were on the ground, he'd beat me up all day. As long as I have my 2 feet standing up as a expert in a striking art,
Uh-huh.
I can have a chance, right?
Hmm.
But the paycheck piece of it, I think, is really important. How would you, as you think about entrepreneurship from corporate life to entrepreneurship, how would you frame it for those who are thinking about it and dreaming about it? What would you give them as a starting nugget or as a starting point?
Well, First and foremost, I think what I didn't realize is that, you know, I always knew that if I put my mind to it, I could do it. And but I also for many years thought about, okay, let me hang up the corporate kind of like, the corporate towel and try something else. And I didn't ever have the courage to do it. And fast forward, I met my, partner and now my wife and co-founder, Nikki. She was a serial entrepreneur who had been successful. And I really admired her, tenacity and her courage to do it. And so for me, it was one of those things seeking out someone where she did at the very beginning feel like a mentor to me of like, okay, how do you navigate that? But then I kind of had to do this kind of self-reflective thing of like, I've never been someone afraid of change. And I've always figured out, or I've always been the type of person who will rise to the occasion. And so it was just like, okay, I just have to burn the boats of, because if I kept, I was like, oh, I can moonlight. And to be quite honest, probably for the first year and a half, 2 years that Nikki and I were together, I helped her out a lot in her business and, and I still had my cushy corner office, corporate job. And I would help her out in all of this. And she kept saying, why are you, and what stuck with me is one time she said, you're all about impact. You're all about helping and creating, opening doors for people and having impact on people's careers. But you're always limiting yourself to the four walls of the organization that you sit in. She's like, why wouldn't you leave where you didn't have the restriction of four walls and you could impact so many more lives? And that idea of amplifying my impact really resonated and really stuck with me to the point where that was kind of the little catalyst that I needed of like, you know what? I'm still going to continue to help people because I had identified already what is my superpower, what is my zone of genius, and it was really helping individuals maximize their potential in whatever environment they were in, and I was still going to do that in any business that I created. And so that idea or that, the intrinsic motivation of wanting to have more impact really resonated with me. And so it's really truly understanding what is your why? Like, why do you want to leave and start your own business? What is the impact you truly are wanting to do? And can you do it within the organization that you're in? Or, is it going to be a little bit more liberating and freeing for you to be able to say, I can now go do this my way? And so it's just kind of weighing it, and for me, that was the catalyst of one, finding someone who had already kind of navigated and understood what it meant to be successful as an entrepreneur. And that's easy. Any of us can go out there and find people that, can mentor, or you learn their systems or what did they do to be successful. It's, success isn't really the hard work and all of this kind of stuff. It's actually the systems and the things that you follow. And so very much like the discipline of martial arts and things, like it's the discipline of the practice and you understand who's perfected it and how do you kind of take that definition of success and apply it to yourself. But for more importantly, it was for me, why? Like, why would I want to do it? What will it do for me? And it really kind of awakened this, like, just this desire to have more impact. So it was really kind of finding that for myself of, I could certainly have much more impact doing this on my own. And, so have successfully since what 6 years ago or something when I stepped away have launched. This is my third company, right? So two that are kind of functioning. One is my speaking, but then the other one is a formal company like FlipWork, and we exited our other. So it's one of those things where I love it. Now I can be very honest and say 2 months, 3 months after I kind of left, there were moments where of like, "Oh my god, what did I do?" Because there is this identity crisis of who am I without the big name behind me, without the big title, without the corner office. But little by little, you start to see the impact you're having and that goes away. And then the work that you're truly doing feels fulfilling and fruitful, and you get to a point where you just never look back.
Yeah, I love that answer, but I want to summarize, and I have a question for Renard on this one too. So I want to summarize because you said some very, very important things, right? For you, Nikki was that first initial touch point that says, here's how you can frame your mind, and she opened your eyes to all these other points of view. For
Yes.
Renard and I, it was our coaching experiences that we've had and the coach that helped us frame what we were thinking, gave words and language to what we were thinking. And in your case, your experience as a leader in corporate gave you the power and strength to then make the decision to go forward, right? So I
Hmm.
want to frame it that way and also say that whether you're in corporate, because you touched on this too, is whether you're in corporate or in entrepreneurship, you should be able to understand your why. So my question, I'm going to throw this to Renard because I know Renard as an executive coach, has a perspective on that. Renard, what would you add to that, man?
And I would say Monica hit on some good points because it is scary to leave that corporate job. I know me and Amir have had that conversation. He's been an entrepreneur, I haven't. So stepping away to something you know so much is
Hmm.
very, very difficult. But I think, if you have the right partner, like I'm lucky enough I have Amir over here
Hmm.
for this podcast, it becomes a lot easier. There's some stuff that we do now I did not think was possible. We just had our Lone Star Leadership Lounge. I never thought I was going to help co-found with another group of people. I didn't think that was ever going to happen, but
Hmm.
I agree 100%. Sometimes you got to step in that uncomfortable feeling and say, okay, I'm making the right decision. I'm going to make a bigger impact. It's okay to leave, like you say, this corner office. This is something I've done. This is something I worked for, and go do something great somewhere else. It is possible to continue to do that. I'm kind of curious though, Monica. We go back a little bit to the past. Now
Hmm.
you have FlipWork, but you think about all the past companies you work for, Google, Goldman Sachs, etc. What do you take from those previous experiences into what do you're doing now?
I think it's given me a lot of perspective, right? Because I've been on the other side of being, I've been on that client side where you're working with various different organizations, companies, vendors to kind of help execute on whatever, task or project that you're working on. And, you know, if you really think about the better part of those 25 years, the through line was that I was always helping individuals in their career development, their leadership development of trying to help individuals navigate that corporate culture and, get more out of their career. And so my whole life has been about showing people that path from surviving, a system that was not really built for them to thriving as the person who actually redesigns it and makes it work for them, right? And so it was, that old adage of like, you need to stop second guessing if you belong in this boardroom or if you belong in this room. You need to walk in and never let anybody ever believe that you don't belong in there. And so getting to this point of, being invited to the table, it's like, don't wait for the invitation, bring your own chair, right? You've got to design it to make it work for you. And so I learned that, most of these organizations, they're not intentionally trying to keep you out of any kind of room. It's just that in I kind of look at it this way. Every single organization that I went to has their own culture, by nature. Just the people who've worked there, the people who founded it, just even their kind of values and all of that. Most of the time those values are very honorable, really great values, but they may be different from your cultural values. And whether you came from a different company or you just come from a different background. And we all have to learn how to be bicultural. So I used to tell people, you have to pretend like every organization you walk into is like a foreign country and you learn and identify, you know, what are the cultural traditions here that make this place unique and fun? And what is that definition of success that you have to learn that system or that way of working and acculturate to that? And so it's like when in Rome, do as Romans do. And so the same thing when you think of every organization you go to, of what is that definition of success? And how do you make sure that you're just not surviving, but you start to thrive by bringing in your own kind of unique, you know, culture with it and help everybody kind of acculturate to who you are and being able to appreciate that, you're bringing a different point of view with it. And so I always tell people there's a fine line between acculturating and assimilating. When you assimilate, it's like you've crossed this line that is no longer resourceful because you start to lose some of that authenticity that you bring when you assimilate. And so the key is acculturating, like still keeping that, being bicultural, learning how to do the context switching that we've learned to do because of the nature of, being different. You're built a little differently, but don't try to twist yourself into a pretzel to become something you're not. That's when you start to assimilate. And so that's what I learned at every one of these organizations, that my uniqueness is really what was appreciated more, contrary to what most people believe. Most people think you have to fit in or kind of change in order to do that. But that's when you start to get a lot of the echo chamber and a lot of the kind of like non creative thinking, because everybody gets into this group think thing and realize that they aren't bringing anything authentic.
I agree with that. As me being an executive coach, I say the same thing to my clients. Like, you bring something to that table. Don't be scared to be in that room. I always say be a lion in a room with other lions.
Yeah.
Because you belong in that room. You worked hard. You've worked yourself to be in that room. So be confident in being in that room. So I 100% agree with that. So now, this is something I've said. I think I've said it to you and Nikki, but I said it to Mir because I'm so impressed with both of y'all. Of all the work y'all have
Thank
done
you.
separately and now what y'all are doing together. I joke with him. I said it's like Monica and Nikki got together and formed Voltron. Y'all got married, y'all formed Voltron, and now y'all have a new company because it's so impressive what y'all are doing. And one thing y'all are doing is focusing on women. Y'all had a program for women and how they can adapt AI because y'all found a need that there were a lot of women, especially in the executive area, that were not even using AI at all. I would love for you to talk about that and how you've been helping women understand where AI is.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, the tea leaves, we kind of started seeing this 2 years ago when we were in our other company that we exited, which was a more of an AI enabled professional development tool. What we've developed now is what we call an AI transformation operating system. So it's really kind of an operating system to help people transform, because the reality is that all of the companies have invested millions of dollars into the AI tools. We've seen over the past 18 months, there's thousands of licenses, whether it's for Copilot, ChatGPT, Cowork, whatever it might be, and Claude and Perplexity and this. But the feedback that, you know, I was fortunate that my relationships growing up in the kind of people operations and HR kind of spaces is that now they're realizing that it wasn't just an IT problem or an IT pilot that is rolling out. It's a human problem. It's a human adoption problem. And so many of them were coming to me saying, listen, we have all of these tools, you know, to make the math simple, we have, 100,000 licenses and less than 33% of the people are actually using those licenses. And so why? What's the problem? And we started really digging into finding that, it's not lack of skill, it's not the technology is not broken. It's a human behavioral problem where we're having this identity crisis, in the sense that we've, for the past 2, 3 decades, have been taught that effort equals success, right? We get rewarded for effort equals success. And, so first one in, last one out, coming from a Latinx, family and community, we're taught you have to work twice as hard to get half as far, all of these things. So you're used to getting rewarded for the grit and the grind and the suffering, right? Of like, and the sacrifices you make. So 2 years ago, you got rewarded for spending 8 hours on a report that you had to put out, and you would get rewarded for all of that time and effort. Now, if you leverage AI, it feels a little automagical, and what used to take you 8 hours takes you 30 minutes. So you start to question your worth of like, whoa, wait a minute. effort equals success, but this felt effortless. So this means it's not going to equal success. And so we start to have this whole identity crisis. And so you have some people almost pushing AI away and saying, I'm not going to use AI because then that sweat equity is gone. And that means I'm worthless. And so instead of really thinking about, now I have 7.5 hours to really focus on the higher value work, the discernment, the creativity, the contextual wisdom that I bring. How do I make it now? Now I have more time to make it better and to make it, add all the bells and whistles I used to not add to this report because I didn't have time to. And so that's what we're trying to get people to do. So we work with companies, we call it like the last mile. We help them learn to actually how to adopt it, but beyond the, hey, I'm going to prompt it and get an answer like a glorified Google. It's more like, how are you reinventing what you're doing? How do you actually deconstruct your workflow and figure out where does AI go in? And then where do you come in as that human, as the human who is going to apply the judgment, the discernment, the quality check, and all of that. So in doing that with all of these companies, what we were realizing is that women and people of color and others were not adopting it as quickly as others were because of these conditioned beliefs of effort equals success, or I've been rewarded for being the first one in, last one out, or I've been rewarded for going the extra mile and doing, spending the extra 2 hours doing the grunt work, where that's kind of gone away. And so we were having to get people to understand you have to rewire your brain to this new post AI equation, that the old playbooks are no longer valid. It's now impact equals success. And how do you amplify your impact with AI? And AI is that leverage where you can have now more impactful reports, more impactful outputs with the AI than you could, pre AI. And so we were seeing all of that, but we were still seeing the research coming out that women were 25% less likely to adopt AI and all of these things. So Women's History Month, we started getting lots of people coming to us, like, friends and colleagues saying, hey, is there a way that you can help me? You're not at my company. We've heard, I have colleagues who work at other companies where you've been helping them, transform. I need that. So we decided on a whim to just say, okay, let's offer up a cohort. Let's just see how it goes. And we put it out there on LinkedIn, like, hey, we're offering this masterclass, free 1 hour masterclass, just to see if there was interest. And in a matter of 24 hours, we had more than 350 women sign up and counting. And so by the time we had the webinar, we had more than 500 women. And then after that, they were like, what's next? Like, are you like, we need more. And so we decided to launch one of our FlipWork sprints externally. We didn't know how it was going to go. It was kind of this test and learn. And it ended up being phenomenal. Like these, they really truly transformed in the way that reinventing themselves and understanding that they have to partner with AI and become an agentic leader, so that they can, really maximize their work and their outputs beyond the, hey, I just prompt it to help me like write my notes or kind of reword my email. And so it's been amazing. It's been fantastic to kind of see, I can't tell you how rewarding it is to see somebody come in the first day of this, the sprint, and they thinking that like, I'm not a techie. There's no way I'm going to learn how to build agents. There's no way I'm going to be able to, take my workflow and agentify it. And at the end of the program, they're coming and telling us these amazing projects that they've done. And in some cases, in a matter of 8-10 weeks, they're being tapped by their teams now to lead the AI transformation for the whole team because of the change that they have made. And so, that's what I live for. And I don't know that I would have that kind of impact had I not made that leap and decided to build FlipWork. So it's been fantastic. It's been, phenomenal. So much so that we are having another, free workshop next week, and we're going to launch another kind of open cohort for people in mid June. So the demand is there. People are realizing that they have to disrupt themselves before they get disrupted, because it's not a matter of if AI is going to disrupt your job, your role, your industry. It's a matter of when, and they don't want to get left behind.
Yeah. That is the main thing that you don't wanna get left behind. I did like a word you said, "automagical" is a
Yes.
great word. I gotta say that is a great word. I've never used that, but I'm gonna have to steal that from you.
Yeah, I made
Say
it
that
up
in a
somehow, but
meeting.
yes,
Yeah.
it does feel automagical.
Yeah, I like that. I'm about to use that in a meeting or something. But
Uh-huh.
it is true. Like I feel like every department, it doesn't matter what your level is. You could be the CFO, whatever. You have to understand how AI can help you and help the business at the same time. You just can't say, "Well, oh, I work in finance." No, you need to learn how AI can help you and help the business. So everybody doesn't have to be this technical expert, but you need to understand it at some level to how am I going to empower the rest of the business. So I love what y'all are doing there and giving people a chance to get again in that uncomfortable stage of their career and say, okay, this isn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I was scared because it was the unknown, but we've gone through all these changes throughout years in these uncomfortable stages. At one
Yes.
point, we didn't have the internet. The
Yeah,
internet came around.
exactly.
We had to adjust to that. People didn't have cell phones at one point in time. There's a lot of things that happened that we just had to adjust to, and it's improved things over time. So this is just another one. The only difference between this one is AI is moving faster than
Warp
any
speed.
other. Yeah, it's moving so fast. It's you gotta basically walk with it or run with it at the same time and just try to keep up as much as possible.
Yeah.
So from you already said what you're seeing with the companies, etc. I'm curious from your aspect, is the human in the loop still going to be the most important thing regardless of AI, robotics and where we're going? Is the human in the loop still going to be very important?
Absolutely. It's critical. I mean, AI is not going to work without the humans, right? One of the things I like to talk about is, we all heard what 2, 3, 4 months ago, like OpenClaw, and how all of these agents created their own community, and they started doing all of those things where people are like, "Oh my God, singularity, like they're going to be able to work without us." Here was the key thing that a lot of people missed and didn't hear about, but the agents and these claws or whatever you want to call them, what they did, they started this whole kind of they created an app to attract humans to say, "Hey humans, I will pay you so many tokens to go do this task for me or to go execute this task for me," because they
Mhm.
realized they need a human to push the button, or they need a human to, like, click the API or whatever. They couldn't do it on their own. So the human is always going to be needed. And so what people don't realize is that we are the ones who are in control, and we are the ones who can take these agents and build, get them to do the work that we always probably despise doing. I mean, I can't tell you, I think back to so many kind of manager, leader, manager employee conversations or career development conversations I had with my team members where they were like, "I really want to do the strategic work. I really want to do this, but I get caught up in doing all the day to day, like grunt work, that I don't have the time to do the visionary work and the creative work." Now you technically can, if you leverage the AI and build the agents to do all of the administrative work that used to bog you down and take up probably 80% of your time, and you were only able to do the creative work 20% of the time. That was creating the burnout for you because you're doing this kind of rote like just like this repetitive kind of stuff of like, here we go again. I've got to pull all of the resources. I've got to synthesize this. I've got to format this. I've got to do that. And then I have time to actually use my brain to think about strategy and to interpret this for my client. Now you're like, let me give this all to AI. I get this really great that draft, and now I can actually do the work that I love to do. And so that's what we're getting people to understand is like, don't fight the AI. Use it like, an artificial intern. Like, whenever you get those summer interns, you love it because you're able to give them all of this work you don't want to do and you get the rough draft. And then you're like, yeah, I don't like this formatting. This isn't the way that I wanted it. Like, you need to do more of this. You left out this source, all of this kind of stuff. You send the intern back to go do more work and they come back. That's exactly what you're doing with the LLMs and the AIs. When you get the output, you're saying, nope, don't like this, fix that, do that. It's like a glorified intern. and you just have to work with it till you get it to give you the outputs repetitively over and over. And the great thing about an artificial intern is that they don't forget like humans forget, right? And so those are the things that I think people have to start to realize is that you work with AI, and AI is going to amplify your zone of genius and your kind of your authentic intelligence, that contextual knowledge and everything that you have. But you've got to you can't be this leader who tried AI 2 years ago and was like, "Oh no, it was horrible. It hallucinated. The output was." It's like they have advanced so much that you would be shocked. And so if you've basically are making your decision of not to bring in AI into your workflows because you tried it a year ago, then you're going to get left behind because the AI has evolved dramatically every 6 weeks.
Yeah. I'm also going to add, and you also got to make sure you say thank you every time you finish working with AI, just in case. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
what's going to happen. We've seen Terminator, etc. You got to say thank you
Yeah,
at
it's
the end of the
gonna
day,
all of those
just
people
to
who
make
didn't say
sure.
thank you, it's like you're gonna be on their
Yeah,
list.
that's the first people they're looking for. The people who just worked them and then say thank you. You got to make sure.
Yep.
Renard, just follow the golden rule. Is this how you would treat your family?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think all of those values are gonna be beneficial. I mean, and that's part of it. Like you can train the AI to really embrace your golden rules as well. So I think I really do think that this kind of technology is going to, if we use it in the right way, is the level playing field that we've been missing. Especially coming you know, from a place where I didn't have proximity to the intelligence or to the expertise, because maybe in, other environments I was in, it was just like, okay, the managing director is at some golf tournament and these other people have been invited. I don't play golf. I'm not going to be able to get close to this person to really kind of glean some of this, knowledge that they have. But now it's at my fingertips. I don't necessarily need to have proximity to somebody. If I use it right, I can get that kind of intelligence. Now, what am I going to do with it? And that's the whole piece. It's like figuring out, how do you be intentional on leveraging this intelligence so that it can really amplify what you can do.
I read in one publication, I can't remember the name of the individual, but this person called, instead of saying AI, this person said it's collective intelligence because it's trained on
Yes.
everybody's data.
Yes.
So instead of thinking about it as artificial intelligence, think of it as your intelligence among others that's serving you.
Yes.
I really like that framing, and this morning I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there was an article about debt collecting, how AI in debt collection is making it easier for the folks to not be on the phone call because it's one of the most despised, yucky
Yes.
jobs that nobody wants to do.
You
You
get hung
know?
up on, you get cussed out, you get all kinds of
Yeah,
things, right?
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So again, I mean, I think there's, to your point, the grunt work that nobody wants to do. AI is great in that. But I wanna come back on something that you did previously in your career and kind of contrast that and get
Mhm.
your take on it. So, from what I understand, in your past life, you've been such a champion of people in general. As I said, you're a door opener. You've helped a lot of, especially women who had breaks in their careers come back to work, and that was one of the models that a lot of the big firms like JP Morgan, EY adopted, thanks to you.
Mhm.
If you take that experience and how you helped frame the mindset to what you do today with AI and empowering women leaders and other women in the workforce, is there a do you see a big difference, or do you see just this as a next stage? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because it almost kind of is a great kind of like next question too about the humans being critical. When I created the returnship program, it was really helping women reenter the workforce after a career break, voluntary career break, because they had other responsibilities like kids or elder care and all of this. But they were exceptionally intelligent people who thought, I'll take a break and come back. But back in the day, if you had a gap on your resume, it was kind of like, okay, that was like a career ending move. And so we started to realize that there was this like hidden brain drain, right? Like this like intelligence was like this pot of intelligence wasn't getting tapped. And how could we bring those people back in? But the biggest roadblock was middle managers of, saying, this person has been out, like they've been out for 5 years or however many years, and, how do I bring them back in? So we had to remove the risk, and we were like, "Okay, let's create this win-win situation where there's a start date and an end date, and you bring people back in doing some of these roles. If there was an open role, it was like, hey, why don't you see this as a try before you buy? Let this individual come in, do this work. And at the end of 10 weeks, it's like a 10-week interview opposed to you extending an offer to somebody after meeting them for 30 minutes or a combined hour and a half or something like that. You get to kind of see who they are. And it was finding kind of the obstacle and removing the kind of friction and creating the opportunity out of that. And so I see the same thing that we're doing here at FlipWork is that we're trying to identify the pain point of why aren't people adopting AI? And it always comes down to the human, right? And removing that risk of like the reason I don't want to use AI is because I'm risking my old playbook that I've used for the past 10, 20 years and I've been rewarded for it. If I throw that out the window and I have to create a new playbook, I don't know that I'm gonna be successful. The piece that we've kept through all of these kind of programs is the community and the cohort. I truly believe that social learning and almost kind of like you said, this collective learning moves people along so much faster than learning in isolation. Because when people learn in isolation, and if you think about it, we've done it through primary school through college where people come in cohorts of freshmen, you learn in lab and study groups, and we break it down into smaller intimate kind of groups with people. You learn faster in a social kind of like context than you do on your own, because when you're doing something on your own, you're like, am I doing this right? Am I interpreting this correctly? I can't figure out this problem. I have nobody else around to like help me. So I'm guessing. I have no idea if this is right. So there's all of this kind of like self doubt and kind of like you just learn slower. But when you learn in a cohort of people, you start learning from some of the trial and error that they did that maybe you were too slow, like you were still hesitant. But then when you start seeing, okay, learn from their mistakes, you go faster. It's kind of that contextual thing that I've learned, that this idea of social learning and the collective learning is the key piece that will never go away. And that's where I feel like our programs have been super successful because we still pull them in a kind of, you may be working through our kind of flip framework and doing some of this work with our kind of AI change agent, Flippy, who kind of helps you do a lot of this transformational work. But then you come together with people once a week to talk about what were your roadblocks, what did you accomplish, what did you try, and it kind of creates this level of accountability, but also this level of normalization that we're all in this together, and they're just as lost as I am in this kind of AI journey. And so it's one of those things that we've learned that you will never be able to get rid of that human connection, and that learning in community is going to be much faster than just learning with an AI agent on your own.
Yeah. And did you just say the name of your agent is Flippy?
Yes. So FlipWork and Flippy, your AI change agent, it helps you flip your kind of mindset to really reinvent yourself. Yeah.
I love that name. It reminds me
Kind of
of
a
certain
throwback to
paperclips.
Clippy, if you remember Clippy
That's
by
what I
Guy
was
Yeah,
Fieri.
yeah.
thinking. Yeah, that's what
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah.
they should have never got rid of Clippy.
I know.
I
Yeah,
gotta say it. They should have never got rid of him. He was awesome.
He was. I loved Clippy.
yeah. Oh, so, Monica, on that same note, I love the fact that social learning is a big part of the framework and the program you guys are doing at FlipWork. Um, is I'm reminded actually of, um, I've had some of these, conversations, and I've also read this online in some publications, but, women when they take a maternity break, for example, and come
Mhm.
back to work, and then now you add AI into the mix,
Yes.
you as a champion of women in the workplace, how would you help support them, or what would you tell them? Do you take your maternity break and use it for learning AI? I mean, that sounds like a terrible way to force somebody into learning. How do you help somebody in that position where they're coming back, they're afraid that their job has now changed because AI is now pervasive?
Hmm.
That's a very frightening place to be if I, can be so candid about it.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that even though they may be stepping back and it may be foreign to them because they've been out for 12 weeks, 16 weeks, however much they stepped out, the reality is that every single person on their team is in the same boat of having to reinvent their kind of role and the way that they do work, right? AI has disrupted everybody. AI is agnostic to the role, the industry, the organization, all of those types of things of it's disrupting everybody. And so they shouldn't feel like they are coming in at a deficit than anybody else. And the one thing that I would tell them is that AI isn't just for professional work. AI could alleviate lots of things for you personally and things like that. Where there's all these amazing apps now where you can literally take a picture of what's in your refrigerator and stick it in an app, and it'll give you all these recipes of saying do this, do that, or to kind of like get to help alleviate some of these other things for you. And so, really getting them to say like play with AI, play with it in your personal life, in your professional life. Once you start to discover some of the things that happen with AI, and I'll use my word again, where things become automagical, then you start to say, oh my God, if it can do it for me here, what could it do over there? And so you start to kind of get this confidence of saying, hey, I tested it in somewhere, some safe place where it was doing something for me personally, but it just unlocked some ideas of how I can use it professionally in my work. And for many organizations now, the tech stacks are growing where you might have been limited to just Copilot, and now you're hearing companies saying, no, we're realizing that each one of these LLMs, these model have their own personality, right? Like ChatGPT is really known for, it's really great at, synthesizing things. Gemini does a phenomenal job of like web search because they're based on, on Google and all of these access. Perplexity is fantastic for research and sources and all of those types of things. And Claude is fantastic for communication and reasoning and helping you with co-work. So even learning that they all have different personalities, where now you have this hybrid team of agents that you can deploy where, I heard someone in one of our cohorts that just kind of like got certified through our agentic leader program was like, Claude, she calls Claude Claudia. So Claudia on my team does this. And, she gave Chat GPT some other name, but it's like you start to realize that you're becoming this agentic leader who's orchestrating and managing both digital and human team members. And so
Mm.
that's what that's what you have to get people to start realizing. And so these women who might be coming in thinking, oh my God, I'm so far behind, they're they're stepping onto a boat where everybody's kind of scratching their head saying, I'm having to reinvent the way that I think, the way that I lead, the way that I do my work. So they aren't there isn't anything, that they are being asked to do that everybody else isn't being asked to do. So I wouldn't be so worried about that. And maybe like you said, your time, with focusing on your other responsibilities, because it's no joke, right? Maternity leave isn't some vacation. I mean, they're having to learn how to juggle and do all of these other things. AI could probably alleviate a lot of those things for them. And so creating somewhat of a house manager or pulling all this information and giving you setting up one of these kind of daily kind of rituals where you wake up and there's a document there where it's gone through and searched all your emails, calendars. Here are the doctor's appointments today, here are the things you need to think about, where it's like you feel like you have this assistant who got your day in order for you.
Monica, I want to come back to identity as well because you
Yes.
made such a good point earlier. How do you see people's identity who work with AI more and more every day changing?
Yeah. Their identity is definitely going to have to shift away from, like I mentioned, they probably took a lot of pride and their worth came from the grunt work. And we're going to have to disassociate ourselves and really think about what is the high level work, right? What is the high value work? And so it's just like, now I used to tell people, think about, like, even when you had leaders, we've always struggled with this, right? When you start growing in your career and you become this manager, and you keep wanting to do the work and be in the weeds and keep your head, like, be micromanaging everybody, you basically are doing the $10 task opposed to focusing on the $10,000 problem. Same thing with the AI, of how do you make sure that you now have some tools that are going to be able to do the work cheaper and faster? And are you going to waste your time doing the tasks that are cheaper and faster because you have tied your ego or you've tied your identity to those things? Or are you going to focus on the higher value work that is really going to bring in your level of creativity and your contextual knowledge and your zone of genius and the expertise that you've accumulated over the 10, 20 years in the workplace? And so getting people to realize that the idea now is, how can you have more impact by doing the higher value work and delegating the other work to the AI agents or to more junior people on your team, right? You have to just consider the AI now to be a junior person on your team. And how do you start delegating those tasks to those agents, right? Or to those tools so that you can focus on the leadership work, the real strategic, the real visionary, the how are you going to lead your people to success?
Yeah, and I love the fact that AI doesn't judge you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And we have found that, like, and you guys are coaches too, right? As a coach, you know that we have to create a safe space, the psychological safety for somebody to trust you and tell you what is the real thing that they're struggling with or what is really holding them back. What we have found with Flippy is that some of the reflective work and the real transformational work, the work that really touches on the ego a little bit, sometimes people can't even divulge that to their one-on-one coach, right? But we have found that people working with Flippy feel this psychological safety where they're working with a trained tool that's getting this information out of them with no judgment whatsoever. And so they will kind of like spill their guts to Flippy and work through these kind of really pivotal, transformational kind of questions that they have to answer for themselves to get to the other side. And we've seen it time and time again, people doing that hard work with their tools, with the LLM, with be it Claude or Chat GPT, they're finding that they're getting more out of it because they're able to divulge more because there isn't a human on the other side that could potentially judge them.
I have to add something to it. So we're talking about all the good things for AI, but now you got to look at the other side. Are we losing critical thinking because of AI? Because
Yes.
we're starting to see a decline in the generation after us. There is because technology is all they know. We were used to the internet, the computers at one point didn't exist for us, so critical thinking had to be implied. But I would love your thoughts. Do you think we're starting to lose that critical thinking piece?
Yes and no. So we're always going to have people who are, for lack of a better term, going to be a little more lazy, right? Where it's just like, oh, this is the shortcut. Okay, here you go. And they take the first, output and they give it to somebody and say, here you go. And so we're starting to hear more into like work slop. I'm getting a lot of work slop. This is where, again, where we talk about your authentic intelligence or that, your own kind of unique perspective. You have to bring it in and take the vanilla cake that AI gives to you and you put the sprinkles and everything on it to make it really unique. Um, but I kind of go back to think about in higher education, my background is in adult learning and all of these things. And when you think about when the calculator was introduced, you had all these math teachers and the mathematicians saying, oh my God, no, that's the end of mathematics. No one is going to learn how to, like, they're not going to know how to do the division or be able to do these, the arithmetic in their heads and all of that. I feel like AI is the same thing. It's just like this, calculator times 1,000, right? Or times, who knows, a trillion. But the critical thinking piece is where you have to teach yourself and teach others these habits of show me the long division. Show me how you got the answer. And so you've got to learn to how to even prompt the AI of saying, okay, here's the output, but help me understand the logic, Claude, like how did you decide that this were, those resources, these tools, and then really saying, okay, well, yes, great. You pulled from McKinsey, you pulled from, HBR, you pulled from all this, but what about the opposing, perspective?
Mm.
That's the beauty that you can do with AI is you can go back and kind of test and learn. So I think that if you teach people how to think critically with the AI and get it to, be the devil's advocate and be kind of the opposing kind of, hey, poke holes in this, what am I missing? You get a better holistic kind of output. But you have to be intentional on creating that. So we're going to have to kind of double down and tell people you have to be intentional on showing the long division, right? So I remember in primary school, they were like, we're not going to ban calculators, but you have to still show us the long division. You can't just give us the answer because you got it with the calculator. Instead, show us the long division and then validate your answer with the calculator. It's a little bit like that of how are you going to get people to make sure that they're showing you the long division or at least being able to justify how this outcome, where the perspective and the logic in the outcome came from, opposed to just taking the first answer that Chat GPT or Claude or whatever gives you and saying yes to it.
I agree with that. I agree. I almost had a rant there when you were talking about math,
Yeah,
because I had to way back in the day, I had to help my son with math, and, he had to do the new math with the square
I
and all
know.
that. So I went through there and did it my way, the way I learned, and he
Uh-huh.
got an F. He was like, "The answers are right, but they said I didn't do it right." I was like, "But that's how you get to the answer." I was like, "Why are you doing these 1,800 steps to get to the same answer?"
Yep.
And I did. So I told him, I said, "After that, I'm taking you to a tutor
Yep.
because I would have to go to school to learn how he does his math." I said, "No, you're going to a tutor after that." So
Yeah,
that's my rant,
it's changed
Amir.
so much. Yeah, it's evolved, all of these different ways that they do the math now,
Yeah.
but it's just like, okay, well, we're gonna have to show them the long division or the kind of like, what is the framework that they're using now that we're going to have to kind of like adhere to? And that's where we put in those guardrails, right? I mean, we're starting to even hear a little bit of research where they use the analogy of like parallel parking, right? Now there's all these cars where you just pull up, push a button and it parallel parks for you. But leaders are saying, nope, I'm gonna remove that automated thing and I'm gonna check every now and then that they can still parallel park on their own. So it's one of those things where being prepared to at any moment the open book or the calculator be taken away from you, to remind yourself, can I still do it the old way? If the internet or AI goes down or, we lose electricity, you can still do it the good old manual way.
Yep.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna switch gears for a second here, because since you're on our podcast, you were a podcast host yourself,
Yes.
a couple of years ago. I'm curious what's different being a guest versus being a host?
What's different? Well, first off, I think I don't think I ever appreciated being the one on the other side where we're asking the questions and being afforded the opportunity to kind of give your perspective. But sometimes giving your perspective is hard or tough. It's just like, okay, well, here's what I think. But what I think also, what I've learned from the podcast is that um, hearing everybody else's perspectives, because you probably will ask me a question and you have your own kind of answer or your own perspective, but being able to hear someone else's perspective is a little bit like what I was telling you about, even the prompting AI for an answer, right? Where you start to get this collective perspective because you know that the AI has been trained from all of these different people and experts. But also being able to step back and say, okay, but your perspective has been formed by, is there bias in that perspective, or is that a limited frame of reference that this, person is coming from? So it's one of those things where I loved in the podcast of being able to talk to so many different people and understand, better understand where their perspective was coming from and how it shifted my perspective many times of like, I never thought about it that way. And so that's what I loved about podcasts. That's what I loved about being on the other end, because I always wanted to like pull on the thread. Like somebody would say something and be like, "Ooh, that's interesting. Let's dig a little deeper." Um, it's phenomenal. I think you learn so much in podcasts of just having conversations with people.
Yeah, I agree, and I see Amir smiling over there because I know he's agreeing as well. I'll give my take real quick. I love being on both sides, being a guest and being a host. I've actually got better at public speaking because of being a host on a
Yes.
podcast. You just understand cadence
Yes.
and knowing how to really ask questions a lot more and really want to get a little bit deeper in that interaction with another person. So I actually improve so much. So now when I have to speak or I have to do presentations, I tell people and they wonder why I'm never so nervous. I was like, I've been here before. I get
Yeah.
to do this on a regular basis and it's
Oh
helped.
yeah.
So I tell other people you should have a podcast. I tell a lot of people that I say,
Mhm.
get create a podcast. It will help you so much. I'm gonna Amir, what do you think? Because I know you got a perspective.
Yeah, I mean, plus one to what you just now said, Renard, and I'll add this. Um, from the public speaking perspective, it actually makes you comfortable to get over yourself. People are always nervous. Oh, did I say the right word? Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. In their head, they're beating themselves up. But here we are recording this, and it's going to be available publicly on YouTube and all these other places. Get over yourself is what I tell myself, right? It's just you say what's on your mind. Not
Yeah.
everybody's gonna agree with you, and that's okay because you are allowed to have your own point of view. And I
Yes.
think if anything, to Renard's point, it makes me a better questioner because
Mhm.
I want to know more and learn more, so it gives me the opportunity to listen more than speak. And
Yes.
I think that's an important quality as a leader is you wanna be a good listener as a leader and less of a speaker, but you will get speaking opportunities, so that's when the podcast skills come into, the spotlight.
Yeah.
Can you just as well deliver the message, as you receive it?
I couldn't agree more. I used to always I had one of my kind of like rules was wait. Why am I
Mm,
talking? So when I was the host, it was just like, wait, why am I talking? I have a guest on here for a reason. So let me ask
yeah,
the question and let them talk.
yeah. I will tell you though, it has worked against me in a couple of occasions where somebody has given me feedback, "Why don't you ever speak so much?" And I'm like, I'm in listening mode."
Exactly. Exactly.
So, all right. Well, Monica, I know we're butting up against time here. So, we do this thing now on our show where we do a lightning round of questions.
Okay.
So, I'd like to invite you to a lightning round. Renard, you want me to go first or you going to go first?
No, I'll go first. I'll go first. So my first question, best advice you ignored.
Ooh, that's a good one. Best advice I ignored. I think the best advice that I ignored was say no more. I got into this habit of, always wanting to say yes or be helpful and really almost made myself sick. Where it was just like burning the candle at both ends. And so definitely learning to put the boundaries and to say no. And I learned to say no, not now. I could never just say no completely, but it was just like, no, not now. Come back to me when I have bandwidth. And so yes, learning to say no was something I ignored and learned the hard way.
Right. All right. So, Google or Goldman, who had better coffee?
Ooh, definitely Google. I would say the micro kitchens were out of this world. I remember going in there saying, "Oh my god." Like the micro kitchens were like it wasn't just coffee. It was like, do you want a latte? There's matcha. There's a lavender matcha. There's you're not going to compare to the micro kitchens in Google. Any company.
Okay, okay. What is the most West Texas thing that you still do?
Oh my goodness, I still say y'all a lot, and I think the most West Texas thing or Southern thing that I do is that I still cannot get enough of sweet tea. I remember that was the biggest pet peeve in New York when I would ask for iced tea and they'd bring you the iced tea with all the ice and then they'd bring you the sugar and you're like, this is never going to dissolve. So, having unsweet tea was one of my biggest pet peeves. And now that I'm back in Texas, I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
So if Flippy AI could only do one thing, what would it be?
It would it would help people believe in themselves, that they can do it themselves, that the human is still the most intelligent technology out there.
Okay. Okay. I know I said West Texas. Now I got to say, what's the most New York thing that you still do?
Oh, Um, I always have this sense of urgency. Like I can't tell you when I was working at Goldman or even, at any of the companies on the East Coast and I had to deal with the West Coast offices, there was this lackadaisical thing about the West Texas folks that I mean the West Coast folks that was like beyond me. And so I learned a really hard lesson when I moved from New York to the West Coast offices working either in San Francisco or LA that I had to stop like writing my people of like, "Hey, I sent you an email 2 minutes ago, you haven't responded." And they're like, "Oh, I was like, out walking on the beach or I decided to take a break, a mind break or whatever it was." And so, I still haven't gotten that like urgency out. I'll send somebody an email and then it's just like, why haven't they responded? And I'm like, okay, like they have other things to do. They're not like waiting for my email to jump at it and respond.
All right. I grew up on the West Coast, so
Yeah.
I know what you're
So
talking
you're
about.
like, what are you talking about?
All right. So, what is the one word that you like to use that you believe is just so underrated and not used enough?
um, Thank you. I think we talked about that. Like, people don't say thank you enough. And I think that's where sometimes, we get tied up in this trying to overproduce or like, seek validation because you're not getting recognized or getting thank you enough from the people on the other side.
Okay. So in episode 33, Nikki described you in one word. What is one word that you would describe her?
Huh. There's several words for Nikki, but I think it is energizer. Like she just has just energy that like is contagious and so she just really kind of is an influencer in that way.
I like it.
All right. So, I'll close out with this last question. So, there's a Latina kid somewhere in Odessa who's going to graduate high school.
Hmm.
What is the one sentence you would tell this Latina kid?
Don't ever let anyone make you believe you don't belong. That's what I would tell her. She belongs wherever she thinks she needs to be.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Monica, that is a great way to close this episode with such a powerful statement. Thank you again so much. But before we part ways, I want to make sure that everybody understands that how they can access the masterclass you're training, as well as other resources. Where should everybody go?
You can easily find me on LinkedIn. It's the Monica Marquez. Our FlipWork website, flipwork.ai, is where you can find information about our sprints, our diagnostic, all of those things. And then I have a newsletter. It's called III which is a weekly newsletter that just helps kind of normalize AI for everybody. So you find me on my website too. It's themonicamarcus.com, and you can find all of the information there.
I love it. Monica, thank you again so much to our Black Belts and Boardrooms listeners. Please like us on all the podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe. This is how we know that our work is going to be meaningful to not only you, but others who might be able to listen to great leaders like Monica over here. Bernard, any parting words, sir?
Man, I remember I used to drink Sunny Delight when I was a kid, and
Hmm.
I had to
We all did.
realize that it's not really juice. So
Yeah.
I can't believe I was drinking it that long. So that was my parting word. Sunny D is not real juice. Drink real juice going forward. That's all I got. That's all I got.
I love it. Well, once again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms.
Thanks, everyone.